all of you who may have questions of where God came from, here it is. Let me tell you that before anything existed in creation, before there was a when or where, a here or there, the Bible says this lesson teaches us that a wise, holy, and all-powerful God existed. It is in him that all wisdom resides. I just told you this. In the end, wisdom from God produces the life that enables a person to have a clear conscience. Y'all catch this. In the end, wisdom, all right? From God, though. Not from what you study, not from anything else, but wisdom from God produces the life that enables a person to have a clear conscience. You don't have to worry about nothing. You don't have to deal with the stresses of life because you walk around with a clear conscience, understanding that your wisdom, your understanding, your knowledge about any situation or circumstance comes only from God. It is within the context of God-centered wisdom that Solomon gave his son instructions on how to fairly and rightly treat others. All right. So here it is. In verses number 21 through 26, we want to see something. We want to see a confidence gain. Okay. We want to see a confidence gain. Let's look at it. Here it is. My son, do not lose sight of these. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. I want to stop there real quickly, and I won't stay here too long. But for Solomon to imply to his son that he must keep sound wisdom, this means that there is a wisdom that can come to a person who seeks it that is not sound, all right? Keep sound wisdom and discretion, and they will be life for your soul and ornament for your neck. I'm looking at verse 23. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Let's look at verse number 25. Do not be afraid of sudden terror or the ruin of the wicked when it comes. Y'all catch that, because verse number 25 allows us to understand that we ought not be afraid of terror and the ruin of the wicked, because one day that end has to come. They have to give an account for the wickedness that they displayed while being alive. All right. When it comes, verse number 26, for the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. All right. The Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. In verses number 21 and 22, the benefits of godly wisdom are many, but Solomon explained that the person who trusts in God will find rest from fear. Come here. Don't leave live, please. Get a little closer. If you can, pull your phone all the way to your face. I need us to understand something, because when you operate in fear, you're not operating in the type of place that God resides. Let me say this again, because fear, God has not given us the spirit of it, but he's given us the power of love and of a sound mind. Y'all catch me when I say this. This is why Solomon explained to his son that the person who trusts in God, y'all catch these key words, who trusts in God will find rest from fear. We have a thing on our marquee at the Antioch Primitive Baptist Church, and it says faith over fear. It does not negate the fact that you must operate in wisdom, understanding, faith, and common sense. But here's the idea I want us to understand tonight. When we trust solely in God for all things and anything, then trusting in the one who created all things gives us a benefit that he knows the road ahead. So when we are operating in him and we're trusting in him, we have a confidence. Y'all catch this. We have a confidence and we have a sense of rest or a sense of comfortability simply because we rest in a God or we trust in a God who understands the world, who created it in such a way that he understands what will happen and the time it will happen. So therefore, those who believe in him, those who are believers, followers of Jesus Christ, if we honestly empty ourselves, our thoughts, our wisdom, our understanding, and we ask the Lord to give to us his wisdom, his leadership, his understanding, then we'll understand that at times where we don't understand, we know that we can lean and depend on a God who does. And at times where we cannot figure it out, we can lean and depend on a God who's already worked it out because we trust in a God, and because we trust in him with all of our wisdom, our understanding, that gives us an opportunity to rest from fear. All right? Here it is. He pictured wisdom as something that is to be pursued and lived. Okay? Solomon reminded his son to keep his eyes on the prize of the wisdom of God. In order for his son to be able to benefit from the treasures of wisdom and discretion, he would need to never let them out of his sight. I notice that with me, the best way for me to remember anything is to keep it in view. All right? The best way to remember anything is to keep it in view. Bro, preacher, can you help me out a little bit with that? Yeah, I can. So some people are just as forgetful as I am, all right? And so I have devices, all of them go off at the same time with the same alert because I have a problem forgetting things. I'm not going to say it's a diagnosis or a mental, situation. I just say I might have selective memory. I remember what I want to remember that's really important to me at the time of remembrance. We all get like that. But I had someone who asked me to call them, and I'll tell on myself, about 2 weeks ago. And while getting really, really busy, I forgot to call them. I did a live. They jumped on a live, and they reminded me to call them. I still forgot to call them. Till to this day, I still haven't called them. And it's not because I don't want to talk to them. It's simply because I have so much going on that I'm only remembering, y'all watch this, what's in my view. All right? I'm only focused on what's in my view. And so what Solomon was trying to teach his son was, in order for wisdom to be a daily thing, something you apply to your life every single day and you live it out, he was wanting him to understand that the only way you can do it is that you keep it in your view. He says, my son, don't lose sight of these. They will be life to your soul. Wisdom can be life to your soul. Hebrews chapter 12, 1-2 says, tells us about how we could keep our eyes on Jesus. It says that he's the source and the perfecter of our faith. And here in Proverbs chapter 3, we are to keep our eyes fastened on God's wisdom. All right? In verses number 23-26, the confidence we need to live out a wise and God-centered life does not come from avoiding those we may fear. I want y'all to hear this. It doesn't come from avoiding those we may fear, especially those who oppose God. True confidence comes from knowing and loving God, for the Lord will be your confidence. All right? God is with us, and it is his presence that produces our confidence, all right? It is his presence that produces our confidence, all right? Our confidence emanates from the awareness that nothing matters more than the presence of God in our lives. All right. I want us to remember that our confidence, if you want to have true confidence in this world, to be able to face the wickedness and the principalities and the powers in high places, and to be able to withstand the fiery darts that will come your way, it is important to know that you must have confidence to stand. All right, Deacon Thomas Haygood, his favorite hymn was "Dressed in My Gospel Uniform," and if I can, and I don't want to mess up the words, "Dressed in my gospel uniform." With the Lord as my captain, and one thing my Lord doesn't allow is cowards in his band, in his army. I was trying to get to that line, and I'm sorry for messing those lyrics up. But that was the favorite part. I used to see Deacon Haygood get tore up on that part, because he understood that if you're going to stand in this time, if you're going to stand in society now where men have become lovers of themselves and lovers of money, and nobody wants to hear sound doctrine, but they've turned to the teachings that are giving them what they want to hear. If you want to be able to stand in such time, you have to have the confidence of God. You cannot be fearful of those who may stand in opposition to what it is you're preaching and what it is you're teaching. For Paul was writing to Timothy, and he told Timothy, he says, listen, I need for you to be instant in and out of season. He says, I want you to do it when they want to hear you, do it when they don't want to hear you. When Jesus gave the commission to the disciples, he told them, he says, go ye therefore, and I want you to teach all nations whatsoever I've commanded you, and I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. And he says, and lo, I'm with you always, all right, even until the ends of the earth. When God is with you, when the presence of God is in your life, that's where your confidence comes from. Your confidence doesn't come from anyone who can speak some type of word of encouragement into your soul or into your belly and give you the strength or encouragement you need to face the situation that you're in. Only that type of strength comes from the presence of God in your life. Our confidence emanates from the awareness that nothing matters more than God's presence in our life. All right? Let's look at verses number 27 through 30. Verses number 27 through 30. We looked at confidence gained. Now let's look at kindness expressed. All right. It says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. Verse number 28, do not say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, I will give it, when you have it with you. I'm not going to stick there too long. I got to come back there. Verse number 29. Do not plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. Verse number 30. Do not contend with a man for no reason when he has done you no harm. Whew. Verses number 27 to 28. The question comes, what ways do our lives show that we are following God's wisdom? All right. One sure evidence is the way we treat others. Let me bag it up, say it a little slower. I just love doing this for dramatics because I want us to get it. A sure way of people knowing that we are following God's wisdom can be seen in how we treat other people. You remember at the beginning of this lesson when I told you that true wisdom has nothing to do with your personal opinion and preferences, has nothing to do with whether or not you like a person today or you don't like them tomorrow. This is not how we should operate in wisdom. True wisdom, if we're following God's wisdom, the only wisdom that is rooted in him and in having him in our lives, it'll show in the way we treat others. In verses 27 through 30, Solomon gave 4 examples of ways the Lord expects his people to treat others with fairness and compassion. First, he says this. He says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it's in your power to do it. Do not withhold good from those whom it is due when you have it in your power to do it. All right. To those whom it is due likely is a reference to someone who has been working for us. All right. This portrays us as employers who have the ability to pay this person for his work because we have the money in our hands. We agreed on the amount of money we would pay the worker before he started the job. When he completes the work, he should be paid because the money rightfully belongs to him. So the first thing he says is do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. Although we don't, as Christians and as believers, have the right to hire anyone to become anyone's boss, because the Bible teaches us that if a man thinks of himself to be something when he is nothing, he's deceiving himself. I would love to take us to the spiritual imagery of what Solomon was trying to teach his son, in that when you have good to give to someone, when you have it in your power to do right by someone, do not withhold that from them when it is due to them. Especially, we'll find out later in this verse, when they've done you no harm. All right. The second thing he says is do not say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, I will give it. All right. The author of this lesson says that this neighbor could have been a neighbor who needed to be paid for the job that he had completed, or a neighbor who simply had a need. Solomon directed his son to act immediately without excuse. First, he says, don't withhold good from anyone who's due it. All right, especially when you have the power to give it. Then he says, don't say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, I will give it, especially when you have it with you already to give. All right. Too often we make excuses. I'm too busy. It's not the right time. I'll help you later. I don't know how to help. That keeps us from obeying God and helping others. Truth be told, I'll raise my hand if nobody else raised theirs. I've made those same excuses. I've made those same excuses just so that I could buy some time at doing for someone what I felt like if I could buy the time, they'll have it done by somebody else. Y'all come on, be real with me in this Bible study tonight. Most of us have made many of these excuses. I'm too busy. I can't do it. It's not the right time. I'll help you later. I don't know if I can. I don't know how to help. If you have it to help, he says, do not say to your neighbor, go and come again. All right. That's the second thing he said. All right. The third thing he says, all right, is that we must understand that, one, not to withhold. Two, not to say to our neighbor. But he says on verse 29, he says, do not plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. Don't be dealing with people in such a way where you have a hidden agenda that will ultimately cause them pain in the end, when they are trustingly dealing with you. So many of us, I'll raise my hand again, has only connected with certain people at certain times in our lives because they could benefit us for the moment. But those same people that we had the mind to misuse trusted us. I need us to understand that we are not always the victim. sometimes we're the suspect. And Solomon is not teaching his son from the perspective of someone doing something to him and how wisdom reacts to what's done to him. Solomon is teaching his son from the perspective of this is how you operate in wisdom when dealing with other people. He says it right here. He says, don't plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. And then the fourth thing he says in verse number 30, he says, do not contend with a man for no reason. All right? When he has done no harm to you. This just means when you're operating wisdom, you're not going to have moments where you're doing it just because. You're contending with the man. You're going back and forth with someone just because. Wisdom does not operate just because. All right? Wisdom teaches us that we ought not contend with no one for no reason, especially when that person has done nothing to harm us. First, the author of the lesson wanted us to gain confidence in those first few verses. In these verses, he needed us to understand how kindness is and should be expressed, okay? Now, if we look at the last few verses, verses number 31 through 35, not only after we find confidence gained and then kindness expressed, I'm going to my seat with this one. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm already in my seat. Man, what does that mean for y'all that's online? Does that mean y'all got to stay and let me teach this lesson? I'm just playing. No, listen, here it is. Not only do we have confidence gained, not only does we have kindness expressed, the author of the lesson wants us to understand out of these last verses, verses 31 through 35, that there is a blessing that will be and can be secured. Let's read this. Here it is. Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways. For the devious person is an abomination to the Lord, for the upright are in his confidence. Verse number 33. The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the dwelling of the righteous. Verse number 34. Toward the scorners, he is scornful, but to the humble he gives favor. Verse number 35. The wise will inherit honor, but fools get disgrace. The wise will inherit honor, but fools get disgrace. All right? With our confidence in God growing and our desire to demonstrate kindness to our neighbors developing, we can live in light of the blessings of God. That whole sentence had one condition. We must grow and have our desire grow, our confidence grow only in God. When our confidence grows, our wisdom grows, and our desire to demonstrate kindness to our neighbor develops, we can live in light of the blessings of God. Nothing is more rewarding than being faithful to God, even when others do not understand how humble service or understand our humble service. All right? And even when it's not recuperated. The point is to be faithful to God, not when or not what we get in return, okay? So the point is to be faithful to God, not what we get in return from being faithful to God. Solomon warned about desiring the possessions of the wealthy who secure them through questionable means. He emphasized that God blesses the dwelling of the righteous, offering them his favor and honor. The key doctrine of our lesson tonight is simply this: stewardship. Stewardship, being a good steward over what it is that the Lord has placed in our lives. God is the source of all blessings, temporal and spiritual. All that we have and are, we owe to him. All that we have and are, we owe to him. All right? Solomon had already warned his son about the temptation of taking the path of a man of violence in chapter 2, verses 12 through 15. And anyone who used violence to get what he wanted would have a reputation for being cruel and unscrupulous. For that reason, people would be afraid of such a person, all right? It would be tempting to envy him because he got whatever he wanted without having to work for it. However, a violent man in Solomon's day was nothing more than a criminal. Accordingly, to choose any of his ways meant engaging in criminal activity with him. That's why God's people would not give into the temptation to be like him. Entrusting themselves to God's wisdom, wise people choose to ignore the example of the violent person. The gain of possessions and fair wealth of friends is in no comparison to God's presence and counsel in our lives. Nothing, I want y'all to hear that, nothing compares to being on friendly terms with God. Solomon presented three separate and distinct comparisons between the wise and the unwise, the righteous and the unrighteous. First, God pronounced a curse on the house of the wicked, okay? God's curse involves the removal of God's presence. This is a strong language. This is strong language. The pronouncement of a curse was a dreadful thing, but notice who made the curse in our lesson: the Lord, okay? As God's people, we are called to love both friend and enemy. Judgment and divine wrath are God's and his alone. Judgment and divine wrath are God's and his alone. You can find that in Psalms 94, 1 through 2, Hebrew 10 and 30. When we take vengeance into our own hands, it rarely goes well. The Bible warns believers to refrain from taking matters into thine own hand. Instead, we can live with the confidence that God is able to act justly and will execute his justice in his time. I want to say this one more time as I go to a close. We can live with the confidence that God is